The war had ended, but the air still smelled of smoke, metal, and sorrow. Rena walked through the broken streets of what was once her home. The buildings were shattered. The ground was scorched. Her people had won this battle, but it didn't feel like victory. She was alone now. Her armor was cracked. Her face, once proud and fierce, was now tired and hollow. Her long, dark hair was tied back, stained with dust and dried blood. In her hand she still held her energy blade, though she had no one left to fight. Her mate Kale had died just hours ago. She had held him in her arms as he took his final breath. He had told her to keep living, to keep fighting, but Rena didn't feel like fighting anymore. Not for revenge, not for honor. Something inside her had broken the moment he closed his eyes. A sound caught her attention, a soft groan. She turned quickly, weapon ready. Her violet eyes scanned the ruins, alert like a hunter. Then she saw it. Half buried under a large piece of collapsed metal, a figure moved. A human. Her heart pounded. The humans had been their enemies during the war. They were the invaders, the outsiders, the ones who had taken so many lives, including Kale's. She walked closer, slow and silent. The human was a young male, his uniform torn, blood covering his forehead. He looked unconscious but alive. One of his legs was pinned under the wreckage and his breathing was weak. Rena stood over him, her blade glowing softly. All she had to do was end him. One strike, and her people would call it justice. One strike, and she could send another soul to the afterlife, just like hers had been taken. She raised her weapon, but then he opened his eyes. They were pale blue, full of pain and exhaustion, but also calm. He didn't try to move. He didn't reach for a weapon. He just looked at her, as if accepting whatever she chose to do next. Rena froze. This wasn't how she expected an enemy to look. He didn't curse her, didn't beg, didn't even speak. He just watched her silently. There was no hate in his expression, only sadness, maybe even peace. Her arm began to tremble. Why couldn't she strike? A voice inside her whispered, "Because you've seen enough death." Another voice said, "Because he didn't kill Kale. War did." She lowered her blade. For a few seconds, they just stared at each other. Then the human closed his eyes again, as if surrendering to fate. But Rena wasn't going to kill him, not anymore. She looked around. The patrols would be coming soon. If they found him, he would be executed on sight. Her people wouldn't ask questions. Without thinking too much, Rena pushed the metal slab off his leg. The effort made her grunt with pain. Her shoulder burned, but she didn't stop. Once the human's leg was free, she checked the wound. Bad, but not fatal. "Why am I doing this?" she whispered to herself. She didn't know. She wrapped a cloth around his leg to stop the bleeding. Then, using a long piece of broken wood, she made a simple splint. The human moaned but didn't resist. When she tried to lift him, he leaned on her, his body heavy with weakness. "Don't speak," she said softly. "Just move." They slowly made their way through the ruins, step by step. Rena guided him to an old structure, a half-standing home where no one would search right away. The door was broken, the inside filled with dust and fallen stone, but it would be enough to hide him. She helped him sit against a wall. His breathing was uneven, and sweat rolled down his pale skin. She gave him water from her flask. He took it without a word and drank slowly. "Why?" he finally asked, his voice rough and low. Rena didn't answer. Not yet. She stared at him, her thoughts spinning. This was a human, her enemy. Yet, he was just a man, tired, hurt, alone. Just like her. "My name is Luke," he whispered. "I didn't want this war." Rena didn't reply. She turned away, looking out through a crack in the wall. Outside, the smoke still rose in black pillars. She remembered Kale's voice, his last words. Maybe Kale would understand. Maybe not. She sat down beside the human and stared at the floor. "You're lucky I saw you first," she said quietly. The others wouldn't have hesitated. Luke didn't respond. He closed his eyes again, resting. Rena closed hers too. For now, they would both stay hidden, both alive. Tomorrow she would decide what to do next. But tonight, in the ruins of war, something new had begun to grow, fragile and strange, something that neither of them fully understood. The sun rose slowly over the ruined city, casting a pale orange light through the cracks in the broken walls. Dust floated in the air, silent like falling snow. Inside the ruined shelter, Rena sat against the wall, watching the human as he slept. His name was Luke. He had not spoken much since she had brought him here. Just a name, and a few soft words about not wanting war. Still, something about him stayed in her mind. He was calm, even in pain. He had looked at her not with hate, but with a strange understanding. Rena's fingers touched the blade at her side. She could still end it. Her duty said she should. But her heart, it was tired of choosing death. Luke groaned, waking slowly. His face tensed as the pain in his leg returned. She walked over and knelt beside him. "I changed the bandage while you slept," she said, not looking directly at him. "It's not infected." Luke gave a weak smile. "Thank you." Again. She frowned slightly. "Don't thank me. I haven't decided what to do with you." "I know," he said quietly. "You could have let me die yesterday." Rena stood and walked toward a broken window. Outside she could hear distant footsteps, her people, the Thalkai soldiers searching for survivors. Her heart tensed. If they found Luke here, he would be killed instantly, and she would be punished too. "We don't have long," she said. "The patrols will check this area by sunset." Luke's voice was soft behind her. "You don't need to risk yourself for me." Rena turned slowly. "You think I'm doing this for you?" He didn't answer. Rena sighed and sat on a fallen stone near him. "I lost someone," she said, after a pause. "His name was Kale. He was my mate, a soldier, brave, strong." Luke looked at her, respectful and quiet. "He died in the last attack," she continued. "Crushed under rubble, just like you were. I couldn't save him." Her voice broke slightly, but she quickly hardened it again. "And yet, when I saw you there, I couldn't walk away." Luke was silent for a while. Then he said, "Maybe that means something. Even after all this death, you still chose to save a life." Rena shook her head. "Or maybe I'm just confused. War changes people." He gave a small nod. "It changed me too." The two sat in silence. Outside, wind howled through the ruins like ghosts crying. The world had broken, yet here they were, two enemies sitting together like old friends. "Where are you from?" Rena finally asked. Luke smiled a little. "Earth, a small village near the ocean. My family runs a bakery. I used to help my mother make sweetbread before I joined the army." "A baker turned soldier," Rena said. "That's strange." He chuckled weakly. "I never wanted to fight, but they said we were defending our people. So I followed orders. I didn't realize we were just creating more pain." Rena looked at him differently now. This wasn't the enemy she had imagined. He was just a man, with stories, with a home, with a life. "What about you?" he asked. "My people are raised for battle. We train young. Honor means everything. Kale and I were bonded during training. We were meant to grow strong together." She paused, looking down. "Now he's gone, and I'm left wondering what honor even means anymore." Luke didn't try to offer answers, he just listened, and somehow that helped. The sun moved slowly across the sky and the light faded inside the shelter. Rena stood up and moved to the door. She peeked outside, eyes scanning the streets. "The patrol is getting closer," she whispered. We need to move tonight. Luke tried to sit up but winced. His leg was still weak. Rena sighed and walked back to him. I'll carry you, she said. Luke looked surprised. You don't have to. She gave him a sharp glance. I'm not doing this for you, remember? He smiled again, but said nothing more. Using a strap from her armor, she helped him onto her back. He was heavier than she expected, but she didn't show it. Step by step, she moved out into the street, staying in the shadows, her senses sharp. The night air was cold. The city was quiet, except for the soft crunch of broken stone under her boots. They passed the burned remains of a transport ship, the frame twisted like a fallen skeleton. Luke stared at it, silent. That was my squad's dropship, he said softly. Only 2 of us made it out. Rena kept moving, her eyes focused forward. You made it. That's what matters now. They reached another building and slipped inside. It was safer here, deeper underground. Rena laid him down gently and leaned against the wall, breathing hard. You're strong, Luke said. She wiped her forehead. Thalkai women are trained to be stronger than most. He nodded, then said quietly, Still, why thank you. This time she didn't argue. That night, as Luke rested and Rena kept watch, something subtle began to change between them. There were still no promises, no trust, no certainty, but the silence between them no longer felt empty. It felt warm. Rena didn't sleep that night. She sat by the wall holding her weapon tight, listening for any sound outside. The patrols were getting closer. If they found her hiding a human, they would call her a traitor. She didn't care what they said, but she did care what they might do to Luke. He was still resting, but his breathing was calmer now. The fever had dropped. She had managed to give him clean water and wrap his leg tighter. Still, he was too weak to walk. Moving him again would be dangerous. By morning, the ground shook slightly. That meant large transports were moving through the area, vehicles used by her people to carry soldiers and scan the ruins. They were searching every corner now. Rena stood up quietly and looked through a crack in the wall. She saw a patrol stop a few blocks away. 2 Thalkai soldiers scanned the ground while another pointed toward the direction of the old shelter. They were getting closer. She stepped back and went to Luke. He opened his eyes and saw the worry on her face. They're coming, aren't they? He asked. She nodded. They'll be here soon. We need to move. Luke tried to sit up, but the pain in his leg made him groan. I can't go far. I know, Rena said, her voice steady. But there's one place they won't search. Where? She hesitated. The underground water tunnels. They're unstable, dangerous. Even our soldiers avoid them. Luke gave her a weak smile. Sounds perfect. Rena helped him up, carefully placing his arm around her shoulders. She guided him through a side passage in the building. Behind a heavy stone door, there was a staircase leading down into darkness. Rena lit a small light from her gear and began the descent. The tunnel smelled of damp earth and old metal. Pipes ran along the walls and water dripped from above. It felt like a forgotten world beneath the ruins. This was built during the old wars, Rena explained. My people used it to store water and energy. Now it's just a ghost path. They walked slowly, every step echoing. Luke leaned on her, silent but alert. She could feel his strength, wounded but still present. Suddenly the ground shifted. A soft rumble passed under their feet. Stay close to the wall, Rena warned. Some areas are weak. Luke nodded, his breath short. As they moved deeper, they reached a large chamber with a small underground stream flowing through it. Rena stopped to let Luke rest against the wall. He looked at her, sweat on his face. Why are you doing this, Rena? Really? She didn't answer at first. Then she sat beside him, resting her blade on her lap. I don't know, she said softly. When I lost Kale, I thought I'd never feel anything again. But when I saw you, something inside, he said not to walk away. Luke looked into her eyes. You're risking everything. For me. Rena gave a small smile. Maybe I'm not just doing it for you. The silence between them was gentle now, a peaceful kind of quiet. Luke touched the bandage on his leg. Kyle, was he kind? Rena closed her eyes. He was strong, brave. He believed in our people, he believed in protecting me, but he also believed war was the only way. And you? I believed in him, she said, but now I'm starting to see things differently. Luke reached out and placed his hand on hers. She didn't pull away. You saved me, Rena, he whispered. Even when you didn't have to. And you trusted me, she replied. Even when I was your enemy. Just then, a loud crash echoed through the tunnel. Dust fell from above. Rena jumped up and held her weapon. Footsteps, metal clanking, voices. They've found the upper entrance, she whispered. Luke looked up, fear in his eyes. Go, leave me here. If they catch us together? No, she said firmly. I won't leave you. The voices grew louder. Rena scanned the tunnel and spotted a narrow gap behind a pile of broken stones. She moved fast, helping Luke crawl through the tight space. It was a small chamber, barely enough room to sit, but hidden well. She crouched beside him, holding her breath as the soldiers entered the main chamber. Scan this area. We found a trail leading down here, one of them said. I doubt anyone's still alive in these tunnels, another replied. The scanner's hum echoed through the tunnel. Rena stayed perfectly still, her heart pounding. Luke didn't move, either. Minutes passed like hours. Finally, the soldiers walked away. Their voices faded. The sound of their boots disappeared. Rena waited a little longer, then slowly exhaled. She looked at Luke and gave a small nod. He smiled, tired but relieved. That was close, he said. She nodded again. Too close. She looked at him, really looked. His face was pale, but his eyes were full of life. Something inside her stirred. Something warm. Something new. The patrol had passed, but she knew more would come. They couldn't stay hidden, forever. Soon she would have to make a decision, one that could change everything. But for now, in the dark tunnel with an injured human beside her, Rena felt something she hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Rena lit a small lantern, just enough to keep the shadows away. The hidden chamber deep in the water tunnels was cold and quiet. Luke leaned against the wall, his breathing still heavy but steadier than before. The danger had passed for now, but Rena knew it wouldn't last long. They'll return, she said, staring at the tunnel opening. And next time, they'll bring scanners that can see through walls. Luke didn't answer right away. His hands rested on his lap. Then we don't have much time. Rena turned and faced him. There's one way out. A tunnel that leads beyond the city limits. It's old and broken, but it might still work. Sounds risky. It is, she said. But it's the only chance you have. Luke looked into her eyes. What about you? I'll guide you there. Once you're out, I'll come back before anyone notices I'm gone. Luke frowned. No. If they find out you helped me, I'll handle it, Rena said quickly. I'll say I was tracking you, that I lost your trail. They'll believe me. Luke shook his head. Rena, I don't want you to get hurt because of me. Rena stepped closer and sat beside him. And I don't want to lose another person I care about. The words hung in the air between them. Luke looked down. I'm not Kale. I know, she said softly. You don't have to be. For a while, neither of them spoke. The tension of war was still there, but something else had grown quietly, in its place, something that didn't need words to be understood. Later, after a small meal of rations, Rena helped Luke prepare for the journey. She tore pieces of cloth from her cloak and tied them around his injured leg for better support. He smiled faintly. You make a good field medic, she smirked. Don't get used to it. Once ready, Rena led him through a narrow passage deeper into the tunnels. It was dark, and the air smelled of rust and wet stone. The ground was slippery in some places, and once, Luke almost fell. Rena caught him just in time, her arms strong around him. "Careful," she whispered. "These tunnels haven't been used in years." "Still safer than outside," he replied. After nearly an hour of walking, they reached a collapsed section. The old tunnel had crumbled halfway, leaving only a narrow space to crawl through. "I'll go first," Rena said. "Follow slowly, you." Moved through the gap with ease, but Luke struggled. His legs slowed him down and dust filled the air as he pulled himself forward. At one point, he got stuck. "I can't move," he groaned. Rena reached back through the gap. "Give me your hand." He took it and she pulled with steady strength. Finally, he slipped through, falling beside her, coughing from the dust. Rena helped him sit up. "Still alive?" she asked. "Barely." He smiled. They continued forward until they reached a sealed metal door. Rena placed her hand on the old control panel, hoping it still worked. The lights blinked once, then again, and finally the door groaned open with a loud creak. Beyond it was open air, the outside. The sky was cloudy but fresh. Trees grew in the distance. The war hadn't touched this part of the land yet. Luke stared at the view. "We made it." "You made it," Rena said. "Now go. Follow the forest path. There's a human outpost 3 hills over. If you stay low, you'll reach it safely." Luke didn't move. "And you?" She looked away. "I'll return." "Cover my tracks. Pretend none of this happened." Luke grabbed her hand. "You saved me, twice. I don't want this to be goodbye." "It has to be," she said. "If they catch us together, they won't let me explain." Silence fell again. Then Luke reached into his pocket and pulled out a small metal tag. It had a name and a number. His military ID. "Take this," he said. "If anything happens, maybe one day we'll meet again." Rena took the tag and closed her fingers around it. "You're not what I expected a human to be, and you're not what I expected an alien warrior to be," he said. They stared at each other and something passed between them, something strong and quiet and real. Then, before either of them could stop it, Luke leaned forward. Not a kiss. Just his forehead gently touching hers. It was a moment of peace in a world full of war. Then he pulled away, limping toward the trees. Rena watched him go until he disappeared into the forest. She stood alone by the metal door, the tag in her hand and a storm of emotions in her heart. She had lost her mate in war, but somehow in all the pain she had found something else, something she never thought possible again. Hope, and maybe, the start of love. The metal door slid shut behind her with a deep echo. Rena stood in the darkness of the tunnel, her heart heavy and her hands clenched tightly around Luke's metal ID tag. The silence felt louder now. Luke was gone, safe, hopefully, but she was alone again. She made her way back through the long tunnels, moving quickly but carefully. Her armor scraped the walls, and her boots echoed on the wet stone. Her mind stayed busy. What would she say if the patrols stopped her? Could she lie well enough to survive? When she finally reached the ruined city, smoke still drifted in the air, though much of the fighting had moved away. The patrols had lessened. Her people were preparing for the next phase of the war, but Rena wasn't sure if she believed in it anymore. At the main command station, her captain greeted her with a sharp look. "You were gone for too long." "I was tracking a human survivor," she replied calmly. "I chased him into the tunnels, but he escaped into the forest. The paths were collapsed. I couldn't follow him." The captain studied her for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Unfortunate, but not unexpected. At least you made it back." She gave a short bow and walked away, hiding her relief. For now, the lie had worked, but her thoughts didn't stay with the army. They returned to Luke, his quiet voice, his steady eyes, and the warmth of his hand on hers. He was different. She was different now, too. Days passed. The war slowed down as both sides began to lose the will to fight. There were whispers of peace talks, secret meetings between leaders. Some wanted revenge. Others wanted to stop the pain. Rena listened, but stayed quiet. She carried Luke's ID tag with her always, tucked safely under her armor. One evening, a messenger approached her. "A human representative has arrived for the ceasefire meeting," he said. "Our leaders want one warrior to stand guard during the talks." "Why me?" Rena asked. "Because they say you've seen both sides of the war." She accepted the task. When she arrived at the meeting site, a neutral hall near the border, she stood at the edge of the room, quiet and watchful. Alien generals and human officers sat at the same table. The air was tense. No one smiled. Everyone waited for the talks to begin. Then the door opened again. Rena's breath stopped. It was him. Luke entered the room, dressed in clean human uniform, his legs still wrapped in support. He walked with a limp, but with pride. His eyes scanned the room and found her. For a moment the world felt silent. He smiled softly. She didn't smile back, but her eyes said everything. He walked to the table and sat beside the human commander, never breaking eye contact with her. The talks began. Words were exchanged, rules discussed, promises made. But Rena didn't hear much of it. Her heart beat faster, not out of fear, but out of something warm and quiet. When the meeting ended, people began leaving. Luke walked slowly toward her. Others didn't notice. They were busy talking about the future. He stopped a few feet away. "I wasn't sure I'd see you again." "You're still limping," she said. He chuckled. "Yeah, but alive." They stood in silence, like the ruins before a sunrise. "You came for peace?" she asked. "I came for hope," he replied. "And maybe for something more." Rena stepped closer. "You should leave. If they see us together, I don't care," he said gently. "We both chose something better than war." She looked at him, really looked, not as an enemy, not as a stranger, but as someone who had shared pain and something close to love. "Will you go back to Earth?" she asked. "Maybe," he said, "but not yet." A small silence fell again. Then she did something unexpected. She took his hand. It was firm and warm. No weapons, no armor, just a human and a Thalkai. "I don't know what happens next," she said, "but I don't want to lose this. Whatever it is." Luke nodded. "Neither do I." They stood together, side by side, while the war behind them slowly faded into history. Their people would speak of battles, of victories and losses. But in one quiet moment between two former enemies, something else began. Not another war, not another goodbye, but a beginning.